Imagine waking up one morning to find your father dead, your brother buried, and your mother smiling like nothing ever happened. Now imagine learning that she was the one who did it, all of it, and that you were supposed to be next. This is not a movie plot. This happened in a quiet American suburb, behind white picket fences, where evil brewed in teacups and antifreeze. This is the story of the Staudte family poisonings, one of the most chilling true crime cases you've never heard of until now. If you're drawn to the darkest corners of the human mind, where family secrets turn fatal, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Like if this case stunned you already. Share with someone who thinks they know what a normal family looks like, and tell us in the comments. Could you have seen the signs? The perfect Christian family. How does a mother look into her daughter's dying eyes and feel nothing? That question would haunt detectives for years. But on Easter Sunday, 2013, no one in the quiet Missouri suburb suspected the darkness that had already seeped into the walls of the Staudte home. From the outside, they looked like the perfect family. Church-going, musical, friendly. But behind their front door, someone was slowly dying. And no one, not the neighbors, not the church, not even the remaining family, seemed to notice the pattern. Not until it was almost too late. Springfield, Missouri. To understand this story, you have to start with Diane Staudte, a devout Christian mother of 5. Blonde, plain-spoken, with a carefully rehearsed smile. Diane was the church organist at Redeemer Lutheran Church. Always early, always polished. Her husband, Mark, played bass in a local band. Harmless, quiet, and then there were the kids, 4 of them still living at home. In family photos, they seem normal, not wealthy, not wild, just your average middle American household. Maybe a little quirky, but who isn't? Still, even those close to the Staudtes noticed that something was slightly off. Sarah, the oldest daughter, was shy, intelligent, socially awkward, but incredibly bright. She had just finished her master's degree. Her dream was to work overseas. Her younger sister Rachel was the exact opposite. Bubbly, confident, her mother's favorite. Then there was Sean, the autistic middle child, and Brianna, the youngest, still in school. Their brother, Mark Jr., had moved out years earlier and cut contact. No one really talked about him. In June 2012, tragedy struck. Diane's husband, Mark, suddenly died. It was unexpected, but not exactly shocking. Mark had been overweight, unemployed for a while, and reportedly drank too much. When he died in his sleep after a bout of flu-like symptoms, no autopsy was requested. The cause of death was listed as natural causes. Case closed. But it wasn't. A family haunted by coincidence. Just 5 months later, in September, another tragedy. Sean, the quiet, reclusive 26-year-old son, was hospitalized with seizures. Violent, unexplainable. His organs were failing. And again, it happened fast. Doctors were puzzled. His brain was swelling. His liver was failing. Eventually, they diagnosed a mysterious form of organ failure possibly caused by something toxic. Sean never fully recovered. He was moved to a care facility, brain damaged, unable to communicate, in diapers, needing around-the-clock care. No one suspected foul play, not even when Diane shrugged it off, telling her co-workers she was glad to be rid of the burden. But then, it happened again. Christmas 2012. Sarah, the brilliant daughter with a graduate degree, collapsed in the living room, vomiting, drenched in sweat. She was rushed to the hospital, shaking uncontrollably. At first, doctors thought it was meningitis, or maybe Guillain-Barré, but test after test came back negative. Sarah's brain was swelling, just like Sean's had. Her kidneys were failing, This time, Diane stayed by her side, calm, smiling politely, chatting with nurses. One nurse would later recall she wasn't distraught, just cold, like she was reading from a script. A whisper in the church hall. It was Pastor Robert Stone who finally noticed the pattern. He'd officiated Mark's funeral. He'd visited Sean in the care home. And now Sarah. 3 family members. Same symptoms. Same household. Pastor Stone couldn't shake the feeling. So, in the quiet of the church office, he pulled aside the associate pastor, who confided something chilling. Rachel told me her mother made her do it. Rachel's confession. She said we had to do it, or else life would never get better. The voice was barely audible. Diane Staudte, just 22 years old, sat across from detectives in a beige interrogation room. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. Not entirely. It was something else. A cocktail of guilt and relief. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, Rachel was telling someone the truth. And what she was about to say would rip open the quiet town of Springfield, Missouri. April 2013. Springfield Police Department. Detectives Matthew Farmer and Neil McCamas had heard whispers, rumors in the church, concerns from hospital staff, strange comments made by Rachel herself. But they never expected this. They brought Rachel in for questioning after a concerned church leader reported her strange behavior. The pastor had overheard Rachel talking about her father's death and her siblings' illnesses with a strange detachment. And then there was the chilling line. It wasn't really that sad. We knew it was coming. At first, Rachel denied everything. But then, she broke. Her voice cracked. She started to cry. And then the words came out like a poison being purged from her system. The words no one expected. It was Mom's idea. Detective Farmer leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Rachel paused. Her voice was almost a whisper. She hated them. Dad, Sean, Sarah. She said they were useless. She said we'd all be better off without them. The room fell silent. She told me to help. She told me what to buy and when to put it in their drinks. Rachel described, in horrific detail, how her mother had given her instructions, how they had researched online together, searching for the perfect poison. Not too obvious, not too fast. They settled on ethylene glycol, commonly found in antifreeze. Sweet, odorless, deadly, and it would become their weapon of choice. The method. Rachel told police they started with Mark, the father. He didn't do anything, just sat around, drank, played guitar. Mom said he was lazy, a waste. Diane began by mixing small amounts of antifreeze into his sodas. Over a few days, his health declined. He grew weak, confused. He vomited, his speech slurred, and then he died in his sleep. No one questioned it. The plan had worked too well, and Diane, according to Rachel, was thrilled. She told me, one down, a pattern of elimination. Next came Sean. He was autistic, required care, struggled with basic communication. She always said he held us back. Rachel recalled, she hated that we couldn't go anywhere because of him. Again, Diane mixed antifreeze into his food, his coffee, his drinks. Rachel helped. Sean began showing signs of confusion, tremors, then seizures. Eventually, full neurological collapse. He survived, but only technically. Brain damaged, institutionalized, forgotten, and again, no suspicion. Then, there was Sarah. This time, things didn't go according to plan. The one who fought back. Sarah was strong, mentally sharp, a graduate student. She noticed the symptoms early, but by the time she collapsed, it was almost too late. She survived the poisoning. Barely. Doctors suspected encephalitis, or a rare infection. They never considered foul play. But Sarah's memory began to return, slowly. And with it, pieces of a puzzle no one realized had been scattered across a year of death and illness. Police move in. After Rachel's confession, detectives acted quickly. They searched the Staudte home. Inside the garage freezer, they found a large bottle of antifreeze, half empty. In the bathroom trash, crumpled notes, handwritten schedules, food plans, even a bizarre list titled things that need to be done, which included: get rid of Sarah, clean up messes, get a new life, and Diane's search history. How to poison someone without getting caught. Ethylene glycol symptoms. Will autopsy show antifreeze? It was enough for an arrest. A chilling arrest. On April 12, 2013, Diane Staudte was arrested. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply looked at the officers and said, "Is this about Sarah?" Diary of a Killer. I've had enough of their messes. I've cleaned up after them for too long. It's time for a fresh start, just me and Rachel. From Diane Staudte's personal journal. When investigators cracked open Diane's private journal, they weren't expecting this. The entries weren't filled with grief. They didn't speak of pain or loss. There were no poems or prayers. They were cold, methodical, and, at times, shockingly casual, as if she were planning a grocery list, not the murder of her own husband and children. The journal, the spiral-bound notebook, was discovered in a drawer of Diane's bedroom dresser, wedged beneath insurance paperwork and expired coupons. Handwritten in neat cursive, each entry told a story, not of heartbreak, but of resentment, of bitterness, and of a plan long in the making. Mark is just dead weight. Always has been. I do everything. I clean. I budget. I raise the kids. He drinks and strums his guitar. No ambition. No drive. Just noise. The words struck a chord with Detective McCamus. She wasn't just angry. He later said she felt entitled to erase them. Resentment turned fatal. Her thoughts on Sean were even more disturbing. Sean is a waste. He won't get better. He can't function. I'm tired of pretending he has a future. It wasn't just impatience. It was disgust. Diane wrote about how her son's needs prevented her from having the life she deserved. Vacations, peace, freedom. Why should I spend the rest of my life babysitting a grown man who can't even wipe the table? To Diane, murder wasn't a crime. It was housekeeping. And then came Sarah. Sarah, the second oldest, was bright, independent, and already carving her own future. She just returned from a mission trip and was preparing to move out when the symptoms began. She's the mouthy one. Always challenges me. Acts like she's better. Maybe she is, but I won't let her get away with it. In a chilling entry dated June 18th, 2012, Diane wrote, "Started her dose today. Just a bit in the tea. Going to take a few days." The casual nature of that note haunts investigators to this day. Rachel, the favorite. But there was one child Diane didn't resent. Rachel. She's quiet, loyal, understands me. We talk. She knows I've done everything for this family. Their bond was tight, almost obsessive. And Rachel's involvement, her complicity, was clearly spelled out in Diane's writing. Rach helped today. She watched him drink the whole glass. I'm proud of her. Investigators realized they weren't just dealing with a solo killer. They had stumbled onto a mother-daughter murder pact. The hidden timeline. By stitching together Diane's entries with Rachel's confession, detectives mapped the murders with chilling precision. April 2012, Diane begins poisoning Mark. He dies on April 8th. Death is ruled natural. September 2012, Sean becomes sick. Poisoning is gradual. He survives, but with permanent brain damage. June 2013, Sarah is poisoned. Hospitalized. Nearly dies. Diane pretends to be the grieving mother. But one final twist was yet to come. Hidden in the margins of Diane's writing. A plan that hadn't yet been executed. A new name, penciled in faintly. Brianna, the next victim. Brianna was Diane's youngest daughter, only 11 years old. Smart, sweet, still in elementary school. Diane had written about her too. She's young, still moldable, but sometimes I wonder. She's starting to ask questions. I don't need another mouth to feed. Investigators were stunned. Brianna may have been next. The psychological profile. Dr. Michael Hendricks, a forensic psychologist brought in to assess Diane, was blunt in his conclusion. This was a woman with no remorse, no empathy. She didn't kill out of passion. She killed out of preference. She had a vision of her life. Clean, quiet, orderly. And she removed the parts that didn't fit. Some experts labeled her a malignant narcissist. Others saw signs of sociopathy. But one thing was clear. Diane didn't see what she did as wrong. She saw it as necessary. Behind the mask, she sang in the choir every Sunday, brought brownies to the church potluck. If you had told me she was a killer, I'd have laughed in your face. Lisa Deering, family friend and fellow parishioner. Sometimes evil hides in the shadows. Other times, it wears a smile and hands you a warm casserole dish. For years, Diane Staudte had built the perfect mask. The image of a devout mother, loyal wife, an active church member. But beneath that exterior was a woman capable of unimaginable cruelty. And somehow, no one, not her friends, her neighbors, or even her pastor, saw it coming. The church woman. Springfield, Missouri, is a tight-knit place, and Diane was woven into its fabric. She attended Redeemer Lutheran Church like clockwork. On Sundays, she sang soprano in the choir. During holidays, she organized bake sales and nativity plays. Everyone thought she was kind, if a little reserved. Diane was quiet, sure, but she never missed a service. She was there with her kids every week. A model parent, Pastor Mark Walker later recalled. Even in the weeks after Mark's death, Diane didn't miss a beat. She showed up, smiled politely, and thanked everyone for their condolences. What no one knew was that she was already poisoning her next child. The mask slips, just slightly. Still, there were cracks, small things that didn't quite add up. After Mark died, Diane showed little emotion. When Sean fell deathly ill, she described him to nurses as a burden. When Sarah landed in the ICU, clinging to life, Diane showed more frustration than fear. And yet, because she seemed composed, people brushed it off. We figured she was just strong, grieving in her own way, a neighbor said. But Rachel didn't even try to hide it. At the hospital, while her sister Sarah was unconscious and fighting for her life, a nurse overheard her muttering something chilling. It's okay. She was going to move away anyway. That nurse reported it to the attending doctor. And that, ultimately, was the moment the mask began to peel away for good. The interrogation room. Once Rachel cracked under police pressure and Diane was brought in, the real Diane Staudte emerged. Detective Neil McCamus described the moment he confronted her with Rachel's confession. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She just sat there, then said, "So what now?" Diane tried to rationalize it. "I was just trying to make life easier. For me. For Rachel. We were drowning." When asked if she felt guilt, she replied, "I did what had to be done." No apologies. No tears. Just the steely calm of a woman who believed she'd done the logical thing. A town in shock. News of Diane's arrest hit Springfield like a freight train. Church members were horrified. Friends were in disbelief. People who had hugged her at funerals now questioned everything. The local newspaper ran the headline, Mother charged with murdering family. Churchgoers stunned. Many in the congregation refused to believe it at first. She wasn't capable of that, said one parishioner. She loved her kids. But the facts spoke louder. The journal, the antifreeze, the confession. No one could argue with that. The sister in the shadows. And then there was Rachel. She was 22. Slight, pale, unassuming. But inside the quiet shell was a mind twisted by loyalty, control, and fear. During her own interrogation, Rachel described her mother as the only one who ever understood me. She said she helped because she believed it was best for the family. She saw herself not as a criminal, but a protector. Her voice cracked only once, when asked if she felt guilt. Sarah trusted me, and I watched her die. The survivor speaks. And then, against all odds, Sarah survived. She woke up weeks after the antifreeze attack, still groggy, unable to walk. She had suffered brain damage, kidney failure, and lasting nerve damage. But her mind was intact, and her memory was clear. She remembered the tea, the strange taste, the dizziness, the moment she collapsed. What she couldn't understand was why. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? She later said, I never imagined my mom would want me gone. Sarah had adored her mother, trusted her with everything. Now, that trust was shattered, irreparably. The trial. I've seen a lot of cold defendants in my career, but this was something else. She sat there, like she was watching a weather report. Prosecutor Kevin Phillips, on Diane Staudte. The courtroom was packed. Local news vans lined the street outside the Greene County Courthouse. Inside, the air was thick with disbelief. Springfield, Missouri, a quiet Midwestern town where nothing like this was supposed to happen, was now the backdrop for one of the most chilling trials in recent American history. A mother and daughter were about to be tried for the systematic murder of their own family by poisoning them with antifreeze. And not just once. They had tried it, perfected it, and repeated it again and again. Jury selection and public shock. The jury selection process was slow and deliberate. Nearly every potential juror had already heard of the case. Some couldn't even say Diane's name without shaking their heads. Others refused to believe the charges. One older man whispered to a reporter outside, "No real mother could do that. That's not what a mother is." But as the proceedings began, the illusion would unravel, piece by piece. The prosecution's opening statement was blunt, surgical. This was not a heat-of-the-moment crime. This was methodical. This was calculated. This was evil served in a coffee cup. The evidence, a murder in 4 acts. Act 1, Mark Staudte's death. Initially ruled natural causes. A sudden flu-like illness that progressed too fast to stop. No autopsy. Cremated. Case closed. Except, he'd been found with vomit on his pillow, and his fingers twisted, almost claw-like. Now, those symptoms were being reinterpreted as classic signs of antifreeze poisoning. Act 2, Sean Staudte's death. 8 months later, again, Diane claimed a mysterious illness. He had been mentally disabled, difficult to care for. She said, but the autopsy, this time performed, revealed oxalate crystals in his kidneys. That could only mean one thing: antifreeze. Act 3, Sarah's survival. She had barely lived. Doctors had initially suspected meningitis. But once the toxicology report came back, everything changed. Ethylene glycol, the same compound used to poison her father and brother. And Diane. She had been by Sarah's side every day, bringing her drinks, holding her hand, pretending to pray. Act 4, the journal. But the final nail, the one no defense could ignore, was the journal, discovered in Diane's room, written in her own hand. Sean, gone. Sarah, incapacitated. Only Rachel and Brianna left. It will be better this way. It wasn't just a confession. It was a plan. Rachel's testimony, the daughter who helped. When Rachel took the stand, the room was dead silent. She had accepted a plea deal, second-degree murder and 20 years in prison, in exchange for her testimony against her mother. She spoke calmly, eerily detached. We didn't talk about it like a murder. We talked about it like a solution. The prosecutor asked, "And how did you feel when your brother died?" Rachel blinked, then said, "Relieved." Her words landed like a slap. She explained how her mother coached her, how they'd add antifreeze to sodas, protein shakes, and tea, how they'd smile while stirring it in. Rachel insisted she only followed her mother's orders, that Diane made her feel like it was their duty to clean up the family, to lighten the load. She said we were doing God's work, that it was mercy. The survivor, Sarah's turn. When Sarah took the stand, she walked slowly, unsteady on her feet. Her voice cracked as she recounted the months of illness, the confusion, the betrayal. She pointed to her mother and Rachel. They looked me in the eyes while I was dying, and they didn't stop. The jury cried. So did many in the gallery. But Diane, she remained still, cold, watching her daughter testify with all the emotion of a stranger. The defense, a hollow echo. Diane's lawyer attempted a defense built around stress, depression, and a descent into madness. They claimed Diane had been overwhelmed, financially, emotionally, spiritually. This is a woman who broke under pressure, the defense said. Not a monster. But the prosecution was ready. They replayed the police interviews, the calm voice, the logic, the clear planning, the lack of remorse. They showed the journal again and again. The jury didn't need long. The verdict: guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Mark Staudte. Guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Sean Staudte. Guilty of attempted murder of Sarah Staudte. Diane accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Rachel was sentenced to 20 years for her role in the murders. As the judge read the sentence, Diane blinked once, but never cried. The aftermath. In the months that followed, the story faded from headlines, but not from memory. People in Springfield stopped saying, "She seemed so nice." They started asking, "What did we miss?" Neighbors struggled to reconcile the woman they thought they knew with the reality of what she had done. The church removed Diane's name from its volunteer rolls. Photos of her were taken down, but the pew she once sat in every Sunday, it still sits there, empty, waiting. Aftermath. How do you mourn someone who tried to kill you? Sarah Staudte, in a letter read by her caregiver. Springfield didn't sleep for weeks. Even after the trials ended, the courtrooms emptied, and the last gavel dropped, the unease lingered. Because this wasn't just about a murder. It was about a family. A mother who killed without rage. A daughter who poisoned without flinching. And the survivors, who were left behind, breathing but broken. This is where the horror lingers. Not in the crime itself, but in what comes after. Sarah Staudte, a life stolen, a life rebuilt. Sarah's recovery was long, painful, and uncertain. The antifreeze had ravaged her internal organs and left her with permanent neurological damage. She had to relearn how to walk, how to eat, how to exist. Once a straight-A college student with dreams of becoming a doctor or a linguist, she was now in and out of long-term care facilities. She couldn't drive. Her speech was sometimes slurred. She needed help with everyday tasks. But perhaps the deepest wound wasn't physical. It was betrayal. Her own mother had tried to erase her, slowly, quietly, and with a smile. Sarah never returned to the family home. The house was sold, the bedrooms emptied, The walls that once held laughter now echoed with something else, something colder. A social worker who visited Sarah during her early recovery said, "She never cried about her injuries. She cried about her mom. She kept saying, 'Why? What did I do wrong?' She didn't do anything wrong." And that's what makes it so haunting. The Public Reckoning, a town in shock. Springfield, Missouri became a case study in horror. The town, once considered a slice of Americana, now bore the stain of something unthinkable. Churchgoers whispered in the pews. Teachers reread essays from Diane's children, wondering if the warning signs had always been there. Neighbors deleted photos. Friends stayed silent. Some refused to believe it still. "She took my dog for a walk just a week before her arrest," one neighbor said. "She asked about my kids. She was polite. You don't expect that from a killer. But isn't that the point?" Diane didn't look like a monster. She looked like a mom. Diane in prison, a chilling calm. Today, Diane Staudte is serving life at the Chillicothe Correctional Center in Missouri. Her fellow inmates reportedly keep their distance, not out of fear, but because of something harder to define. A kind of vacuum around her, a silence that repels. Guards have described her as low maintenance. She doesn't cause trouble. She reads the Bible. She answers questions in short, polite sentences. She never talks about the murders. When asked if she regrets what she did, she once responded, "What good would that do now?" It's not a denial, not an apology, just a shrug from a woman who dismantled her family like it was spring cleaning. Rachel's time behind bars. Rachel, the daughter who helped plan the poisonings, is serving her 20-year sentence. Unlike her mother, Rachel reportedly does participate in therapy programs. She rarely speaks to the press. She will be eligible for parole. Some argue she was manipulated. Others say she made her choices. The truth, as always, may be somewhere in between. You don't wake up one day and decide to kill your family. It happens little by little. You get used to small cruelties until you forget they're cruel. Anonymous prison counselor who worked with Rachel. And what about Brianna, the youngest child, just 11 years old when her father and brother were murdered, was immediately removed from the home after Diane's arrest. Her name was changed. Her location kept secret for her safety and privacy. Today, she is likely in her 20s. There are no public updates, no interviews, no photographs, and maybe that's a mercy. That the youngest, the one who never knew the full story as it unfolded, might be allowed to live rather than relive. But she carries a last name she'll never speak again. The questions that haunt us. Even years later, this case echoes. It forces us to look at the ones we trust most and ask the most terrifying question. What if the greatest danger is already inside the house? We're trained to look for monsters in the dark, to run from shadows and strangers. But this story, the story of Diane Staudte, reminds us that evil sometimes bakes cookies, plays board games, sings at church, and smiles while stirring antifreeze into a sports drink. Reflection, can it happen again? What do we take away from this? Was Diane a product of desperation, of mental illness, or of something darker? A lack of empathy so complete, it renders her inhuman. How did a town, a church, a family miss the signs? More importantly, could it happen again to another family, another town, to yours?